the opportunity to hang with so many of the guild members that we've slugged through some things over the years, but every time we connect, there's a great opportunity for learning both more about you and your work, and also about how how we can help one another, and just the community grows. I'll just say that. And for those of you who are newer to the guild and are just stepping into this, what a wonderful opportunity you have in the Day of the Swan to have hours and hours of connection with some pretty sharp minds, deep thinking, and stimulating thoughts. So that's my commercial for why we're here, what we're doing. And yet we enter this danger zone of not knowing exactly how Lauren's going to educate us next, and how she's going to pull us into this in ways that could be threatening or rewarding. So with that, let's go ahead and start. We've got the recording going, so I'm going to move past that and try to introduce Lauren. She's going to talk about a particular spectrum, and the title, "The Spectrum of Assholes," is one that I never thought I would say, but I'm honored to introduce it, and to introduce Lauren. Lauren is a digital media leader, and I'll let her describe her background and experience further as she likes, because again, I don't want to become a poster child for her topic. But you know, one of the things that's in our notes about Lauren that I wanted to share, and it's related to Jen's topic from a few hours earlier, is during the pandemic, she's run programs that have directly led to emergency food and housing for thousands of Canadians. So thank you for that, Lauren. And with the risk of embarrassing you for your goodness, and maybe making your list, I sincerely mean that. And I'll turn this over to you, as we're just now about to hit the top of the hour.
Oh my gosh, I wish I had. Rob, will you introduce me? You are going to do a much better job than me.
Yeah, thankfully, when I think about Lauren, I once described her as a person who can foment change that was phenomenal. And I think that when I think of the word phenomenal, I look at the background that Robert has behind him, and it reminds me of the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is a phenomenal thing. It is huge. It is monumental. It is a wonder of the world. But it was made by water. It was made by a river. It was made by the Colorado River. When I think about Lauren and the impact that she has on collective intelligence and the impact she will have on the world, I think of her as the Colorado River. That's Lauren. She's here to talk about anything she wants, which is how this started. I said to her, Lauren, let's talk about anything you want and I will help. And she looked at me square in the eye and said, Rob, I think we should talk about assholes. I'm like, and that's what we will do, because we've been working on different ideas around extreme behaviors, extreme concerns, gray swans, black swans, the impact of computing on the world, the difference between computing and people. And then this long loop that we've been doing around, and then Lauren's been teaching me about how to put certain groups of people together to create the capacity for more intelligence than any one person would have, more intelligence than the group of 2 or 4 or 10 or 100 people would have, collective intelligence. 2 + 2 = 72. In looking at all those people gathered together, Lauren has indicated that some people should be in the group, like there should be a gambler. She has taught me. I counter, well, there should be a mathematician. But those are the people who should be in. So when Lauren's thinking about people who should be out, that's a different discussion. And that's what this topic is about the spectrum of assholes.
And Rob and I have been doing decades of field work. And so we'd like to share some of our, hard-won knowledge with you. And just to let you know, I'm an evangelist and I just want to save your souls. And I feel like the more that we can educate you beforehand, the better chance you will have to live a happy life and get out of tricky relationships early. Oh my gosh, how I wish I had this information decades ago. So yeah, I will start. Um, Hang on just a minute. Okay, you can see my screen. Everything okay?
Yeah.
All right, good, good. So, why are we learning about assholes? Number one, we can save ourselves so much pain by learning about the patterns that people show. The more you know about different types of assholes, the more you can keep you and your family safe and be able to predict their behavior. Um, Also, you can learn the value of empathy. You can start going beyond appearances because Rob and I will show how appearances can be deceiving, and the people who seem the nicest can be the worst. And some people who seem like assholes at the beginning are actually not. So, we're going to tell you a little bit about that. You can improve your workplace and significantly, this work that I've done, the research that I've done on personality disorders actually led me to a pretty profound realization and changed my deeply held views on good and evil. So that really kind of transformed the way that I see the world and my mental model in terms of what goodness actually is and what evil actually is. So, just so you know, almost 20% of the population has personality disorders. And so we're going to go through this. We're going to, see the kind of spectrum of different assholes that exist. Some are personality disorders. Some have some. It's what would you say, Rob? Personality disorders. Some it's a physical thing. You're muted.
It could be a chemical imbalance. It could be a physical injury. There are lots of different reasons for this. The good news on the statistics is that given this room has 16 people in it, there's a statistical probability that no one has a disorder in this room. And then if assholicness is a disorder, and Lauren may talk about that, even less a chance that there's an asshole in this room. But
Right.
it's statistics.
Right.
There is a chance.
Right. So I just want you to be highly aware that dealing with people who are very, very today we'll be focusing on people who are extremely difficult. It's not somewhere out there. It's something you'll have to deal with within the course of your life. And the more you know, the better that you can protect yourself. So one of these assholes is not like the other. Can anyone venture a guess?
Autistic?
Right, exactly. Rob, do you want to explain?
Sure.
Do you want to explain why?
Autism is a spectrum, a different kind of spectrum. It is really about a different way of thinking. It is a type of thinking, a neurodiversity. There is a norm that people consider. Autism has been selected as a collection of behaviors and results that really no one knows what it is. It's been labeled by lots of things, but it certainly isn't Asperger's syndrome. That is an old label. It certainly isn't an idiot or an idiot savant. It's someone on the spectrum that has a different way of thinking because of the way their brain is made up.
Right. And why do people with autism seem like bigger assholes than they are?
Yeah, some of the conditions that type of neurodiverse brain is unordered is that the connection of visual stimulation to feelings and emotion are kind of haywire. They kind of don't connect. Where it would be very obvious for a little baby to connect to a smile or a frown, someone in the spectrum, in the autistic spectrum, doesn't have that connection. So that in the conversation that happens between two humans, it's very much ingrained. It's not just an individual, it's two individuals having a conversation. If the other person doesn't respond right away, the person who is in the, call it the normal spectrum that we call it today, if they don't receive that signal back, well, they'll treat the person as an other. And that other has a possibility of being considered as an asshole. And there's a person in the room behind the virtual screen.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so the rest, thank you, Rob. The rest, these four, the reason I'm going to focus on them today is that they are actually highly dangerous, very manipulative, super intense. And the important thing to remember is that these people are incapable of healthy relationships. So I want you to know about these patterns so you don't bang your head against the wall, spending time trying to make these relationships work. The point is, they cannot work. If you get into a relationship with one of these people, you cannot have a good result. It is a relationship of inevitable harm. Okay, so this is this is called an area called Cluster B. And these are all clustered within the same space in the DSM and the psychological manual. And so, and the thing is about these people is that they come off as normal, and not even normal, but beyond. They can often, these relationships can start out as wonderful, your soulmate, someone who mirrors you. They're amazing. They treat you so well, often skilled in amorous relations. So they can lure you in, and they start out with love bombing you. Does anyone know what that is?
Tell us. It's such an interesting term.
Anyone? No one? Seriously?
No one wants to get it slightly wrong, but I'll jump into that. I think, a love bomb is really they're someone who's fawning all over you and doing everything they can to convince you that all is good and that they're very interested in you in positive ways. That's my take on what that phrase means to me. Is that close, Lauren, to what you're saying? Okay.
Does anyone want to venture a guess as to why love bombing is so important in the once it gets to the trauma stage of the relationship? Why it's important?
Because it makes it simpler for that person to control your actions, because then you don't understand how someone who could profess so much love for you could then act in a unusual or irrational or asshole type of way.
Oh, yes, very good. And
I've had that experience before. Totally understand what that is.
Yes. So, do you know what kind of bias? There are a couple biases in your brain that have something to do with that. Would anyone venture to guess? There's one bias when you meet someone and you start thinking of them as kind of like an angel with a light around their head, and they come in being so nice and so amazing in the way that they communicate. That creates something called the halo effect. And the halo effect, does anyone know what that is?
Is it a bias?
What?
Is it a bias?
Yeah, it's a bias. Once you have the halo effect, basically your mind, it starts attributing all these other great things according to this person, and it makes it very, very difficult to believe later on. It basically, like, your mind, whatever first impression you have, it creates a bias so that it gets really confused if someone doesn't, if they're not the initial impression. And another thing that love bombing does it basically puts you into a trance. So you're learning things. They're, doing a lot of eye gazing and spending a lot of time with you, and it's very intense, and you're very, very focused on that person. And it creates what's called state dependent learning, so that it's almost like being hypnotized. It actually kind of, it is being hypnotized, so that the things that you learn, that these intense experiences are buried very deep down inside you. And so even if this person abuses you later on, the state dependent learning, the love bombing at first, the memories stay more powerful in your mind than the later memories. So even if it gets really bad later on, it keeps, the good times keep flashing back to you. So it makes the trauma part much, much stronger. So these people, the cluster B kind of, I've put them there. I've put them as narcissist, unstable, and predator. Their names in the DSM are NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline, I think personality disorder, and either I kind of lump together sociopath and psychopath together into predator. And so these three types of personalities, they have something that is called cognitive empathy, or theory of mind. That means that they are actually very good at knowing what you're thinking, but they don't actually have affective empathy, which means they are not feeling with you. They are not catching your emotions. You're probably catching their emotions. And so that means that they can kind of predict what you're thinking and sound like they're very empathetic, but they might not actually be feeling what they're saying. So it can be very, very confusing. And so what these relationships cause is something called cognitive dissonance. And so that is like, when you break your arm, you feel like a physical hurt. When you have a bad breakup with someone who you love very much, that can cause a broken heart. Cognitive dissonance is like a broken mind. And it's like your brain simply cannot put together a story out of the fragments around you. So you just can't put together a narrative of what happened to you. So people just like, they start to relive it and be like, what happened? And they're like searching all over the internet, like what just happened to me? So this is, it's very difficult for people to get over. And it makes it harder for people who are suffering from cognitive dissonance. That's one reason it's so hard to get out of the relationships. Also, one tactic that these three types use is called gaslighting. Does anyone want to explain what gaslighting is? Rob?
It's evil.
That can't be true. That can't be true. Maybe it is true. Maybe they told me enough it's true. I think it's true now. Is that gaslighting?
That
Some
is totally
people say
gaslighting.
It's not true. Some people say that.
Remember that song by Shaggy where it's called It Wasn't Me, and he's saying the girl like actually like saw him, where it's like she walked in on him and he's like, it wasn't me, and he just keeps repeating it, and she's like, I just walked in on you. He's like, it wasn't me. It's like that. That's gaslighting. And so my deepest advice to you, something that I want you to take from this talk, is to listen to your body. Because with these types, because they are so rational seeming and cognitively intact, your neocortex So your thinking brain, they'll get through all the guards of your thinking brain many, many times, because they won't make a cognitive error. But your body will pick up on clues that something isn't right. Does anyone want to explain why? Rob?
Boy, because it wants to, because of your biases, because of your experience with people that are normal.
Yeah, so this is what happens. Your old brain, the old kind of Paleolithic kind of emotional brain called the limbic system, is built to detect predators. And the way your subconscious is like a supercomputer, and like collects patterns from the past. So it has like thousands and thousands and thousands of patterns to match. But your subconscious can't always, there's not always a direct link to your conscious brain. So when you're kind of internal subconscious supercomputer, goes through all the instances of like past predators and makes a match, it can't alert your brain and say, hey brain, excuse me, but this person is probably no good. What it does is send alerts through your body. So it raises the hair on your arm, or it makes your tummy feel weird, or it gives you headaches. And so your body is actually going to give you, your body is going to start to feel like something isn't right before your mind does. So when people say, listen to your instincts, that is why. Oh, here.
So earlier we were talking about, in the earlier session, we talked about not listening to your limbic system when you're stupid. This one should be, you should listen to your body because we're making you smart.
Yes. Okay, so we've had some talks before. I think Dave and maybe Julia as well were talking about mental models. And so mental models are these things in the back of your mind that you don't even really examine, because they color the lens and how you see the world, but they're often not examined. And so the mental model that most people use to think about communication is, you think, okay, my partner and I are going to communicate, and what that means to me is that we're going to sit down and talk things out. I'm going to say, these are my needs, and they're going to say, oh, well, these are my needs, and then we'll come to a realization, and once we know what the other person is thinking. That is not everyone else's mental model of communication. And for the cluster B types, I will refer you to Cartman's drama triangle. Oh my gosh, how I wish I had this years ago. How much anguish it would have saved me. So look at this. It's basically like rock, paper, scissors. You have to pick one of these three roles, and then the other person must play an antagonistic role. So it is not two partners on an equal basis working through a problem and using communication to make things clearer. You're playing a role in a drama where someone is either a rescuer, a victim, or a persecutor, and the other person has to play the opposing role. This is, I think this was made by Stephen Cartman. And once you know this, so many things become so much clearer. So keep this in mind.
So Lauren, I would usually call that like Rob Tyree when he was 18 years old on a Friday night, all three. But we've got a question I think you're going to deal with later, but Lise asks, with this type of problem in relationship, how will we deal with these people if there's no option to remove them from ourselves from the relationship. Working in, maybe it's a working professional community relationship. It's the leader of your community center, the leader of your church, your Uncle Steve or Aunt Susan or Uncle Susan. What if you can't remove that person? You don't have to deal with it now, Lauren, but that's a really good problem, right? Because there's an assumption, if we treat this tritely, that, oh, it's a relationship, I can just erase it or I can just cancel it.
Right.
So we'll cover that, right? I'm pretty sure we're covering that.
Yeah. And we'll see how far we get. That's a great question, though. Great question. So I've taken a lot of the following slides, especially the one with all the word clouds, from Joe Navarro in his book, Dangerous Personalities. Very great book. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It has a very detailed checklist that are like 10 times better than the DSM, to tell you the truth, the diagnostic manual. Okay, so narcissist. Does anyone have any experience with this type?
I'm too great to have narcissists in my life.
Has anyone voted lately?
Anyone want to take a stab at this one?
Oh man.
Anyone here? I will. Okay. So their motto is, "The problem is you, not me." Motivated by status, initially charming, and the most frustrating aspect of a narcissistic personality is that it is so difficult to get an apology or a sense of accountability. We talked about communication already. So what people don't realize is that it's just this person is just not going to be capable of insight. You're just not going to get it, and the more energy you put into it, you're just not going to get that back. So some of the signs are extreme entitlement and not respecting your boundaries. What people usually think of when they think of a narcissist is someone who is an extravagant boaster, but that's not always true. Basically, that they put themselves on kind of a pedestal, or they want you below them. So we all know of the kind of like bragging person, but what can be very, very dangerous, and when someone's more covert, they can just kind of subtly insult you, and people might not really notice because it's more like a neg, where it's not quite an insult. They just kind of suck all the joy out of the room, so that it just makes you really hard to feel like you're flourishing. So that's why it can take people 20 years to realize that they're in a relationship with this kind of person, because it can be very, very, very subtle, and they never think, oh, this is a narcissist, because it's not someone who has they don't seem like the type.
Lauren, when I look at this list and I remember the word cloud nicely in alphabetical order,
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of CEOs.
Oh yeah.
Why does society, why do shareholders value CEOs, or the opposite, the other correlation, not causation, but other correlation? Why are they successful? Because we saw in the other in Jen's show, I had that stat where we've got CEOs making 351 times more money than the average employee in a company. So why is, like, that list is an awful list. But then I look down that list, I'm matching names like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Tom Siebel, some of whom I've worked for. And I know of them quite well. Why does society treat them with value? Because we don't know how to label assholes? Like, well, do you have a clue, or do I just have to give up?
Yeah, so I mean, the way that the corporate workplace is structured, it actually rewards narcissists. So a narcissist is like 10 times more likely to be hired than someone who's autistic, because they show up well and they can make their resume appear good. And because we have a bunch of bullshit jobs where it's not like the way to measure it is through like people giving the impression that they're doing something instead of really doing something. So that's, one of the effects of, bullshit jobs, as David Graeber explained. So yeah, there's a reason cluster B are definitely all up in corporate culture. They're definitely rewarded by the structure of how things are, and that's why it's so important. They actually lower the collective intelligence of the group because they take over and they dominate, and they because of their lack of empathy, they make themselves seem great, and then people follow them. So yeah, good insight, Rob.
I love Gregory's comment about dressing like a peacock to stand out. And I just to add to Gregory's comment about narcissists, and I hate to give fashion a bad rap. I'm actually having a session with a person who spends most of their life in fashion. So please don't listen to Akash. But it's interesting in a COVID world how, they've come to the conclusion that, people that really dress to stand out aren't great team players in corporate environments. And I'm just wondering if there's a COVID, has narcissism gone up or gone down in COVID, maybe, Lauren?
During COVID, I'm not sure. Probably, it just seems like it's going up and up, honestly. Yeah. So, let's see. Basically, the takeaway is that limit your contact as much as possible, and do as much as you can. Do not play the game. Just don't participate. And with all cluster B, the more that you can be boring, the more they will leave you alone. So the less that you participate, the less that you get upset, the less that you show anger and extreme emotions. What they're trying to do is to elicit extreme emotions. So whoever gives them that feedback, extreme in any way, whether it's like people falling in love with them, or getting mad, or just reacting in any way, makes you a much more fun victim. Because they thrive on drama. So the less dramatic you can make yourself, the better. Yes. So if you get into this type of relationship, you actually want to seek trauma-informed care instead of reliving your experiences by talking about them with like people on the internet, or people want to talk about this incessantly. Don't do it. Just go to a therapist and get someone trained in this particular disorder. And also don't there's a lot of talk about codependency. That's not necessarily the case. You could be just totally normal and just fall into one of these relationships. So here's some resources. Oh, fun. Unstable. This is here. So the main motto here, I hate you, don't leave me. So these people are mainly seeking stability. And so with a narcissist, they're kind of like, they're the ones on the pedestal. With the unstable, you're the one on the pedestal. So they're very, 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 very needy and demanding. And they're both sort of pathetic and controlling at the same time. And so they make you want to leave but don't actually want you to leave. So you're just in a state of craziness. They kind of careen from one strong emotion to the other. So these people are they are really truly suffering. They're not actually looking to be mean, but a lot of times they might have problems regulating their emotions. So they have something called like emotional dysregulation. So they actually just can't, a lot of times, they physically can't calm themselves down. Most people, when they get mad or something like that, they experience the emotion, and then they have these like internal mechanisms to calm themselves down. Unstable people don't have that, and so they can start ruminating and get very, very, very upset for days at a time. So they're saboteurs, and they can sabotage not only themselves but you. And even though they might have great souls, they might seem very, very empathetic. The reason in the end they're not as empathetic as they seem is that they start to become very suspicious of you. And so throughout time, like if you try to play with anyone else, they'll get very upset that they weren't included. And so it's really crazy making. And the exit from this relationship is very, very difficult because they don't want you to leave. So the phrase associated with this kind of borderline type is walking on eggshells. So you constantly feel like, oh my God, if I just do the smallest thing, I'll upset them. Or if I say the smallest little criticism, they'll remember it for months and months at a time and bring it back up at the whenever you have a conflict.
So Lauren, you mentioned this, the play comment, twig the thought there. These behaviors express very early in life, right? This isn't something you don't grow into unstable. You could start very early. Yes. And same with narcissism.
Yeah. And sometimes, just to make it more confusing, like someone who actually suffers, like a victim of narcissism can actually display symptoms of unstable or borderline personality disorder. So it makes it really confusing. And so, a lot of these people are actually victims or have like a parent who is a psychopath or a narcissist or something like that. So it's really sad. And the people are really suffering, but also you will suffer when you're in a relationship with them. So it's just really complicated, and it's harder than you think to get out of a relationship with these people. And if it's your son or daughter, then it's just like with any of these personalities, it's just really, really heartbreaking. So the more you know, the more you can feel empathy for people who are in these long-term relationships. It's very, very hard. It's more than just like a simple asshole. It's harder to get out of than you could imagine. So the key takeaway: someone acts like a smitten seventh grader, get out of there. If someone tries to put you on the pedestal, that's not a sign of a healthy relationship. Healthy relationship is a partnership. No one's on a pedestal. All right. Some resources. And paranoid. So I doubt there are a lot of this type around the Gray Swan Guild. I think they're too busy watching Tucker Carlson, I think.
Oh, political. Whoa.
Sorry.
Poor Tucker. Oh, I'm sorry. He's not poor. He's the highest paid newscaster on that network.
Okay.
As Rob has told me, we're allowed to be political. We just have to play both sides. So you have to throw somebody way too far on the other side on the bus too, and then you're
Justin
fine and
Trudeau.
again.
Okay, great. Okay, so these the paranoids are the true believers. I'm gonna kind of like dash through this one. So they're like bashing people who are different in any way, or there's always an enemy, the IRS, the deep state, the insurance company. Um, these people are like Pol Pot, Stalin, Hitler. They were paranoid combined with narcissistic, and that is a killer combination. That is probably the most dangerous that exists. So basically, they're suspicious of everyone, hypersensitive. Um, they have like weapon systems. They're the preppers. They're probably a great person to know if the stuff does actually hit the fan. Like they're probably a great friend to have. But probably a difficult husband, and they're so suspicious and jealous that they just but they're not as clingy. They like to be alone more than others. So and they're also kind of know-it-alls, into kind of pseudoscience and stuff like that. So basically, please just don't try to get into an argument with them. You're just wasting your time. Just try to avoid them as much as possible. But the difference of paranoid people from the rest of these predators is you don't suffer cognitive dissonance like the other three in cluster B. So Eric Hoffer, if you haven't read this book, it's a great book, The True Believer. So predators. So these are, this is like a tornado. A predator is like a sociopath or psychopath, and they are basically everything that a narcissist is, but even more hardcore. A narcissist is low on empathy, but a sociopath is low on both empathy and then has almost no conscience. So it's just a double whammy. So the thing about predators is they have a huge need for excitement and stimulation, zero impulse control. The reason why people find it so difficult to spot these people, listen up, because the mental models in people's head is that evil is a thing. They think it's a thing. Evil is not a thing. It is a hole. It's an emptiness. And while you're thinking that evil is a thing, that means in your head, you're going to be like, it's a thing. So when I look in that person's eyes, I'm just going to tell that they're evil. And that's why everyone's like, what? Ted Bundy? But he was charming. Yes, he was charming. You're not going to see it. That's the thing. And that's why you have to listen to your body for signs that your body is telling you this is like another predator that you've seen before. So someone might not have an evil, crazy look in their eye. They're not going to be foaming at the mouth. They're just going to look like regular people. They just don't form loving bonds like other people. So the reason it's so hard to spot them is that conscious for most people is just, it's like a sense. It's like a sense of smell. You can't imagine being without it because it's so much a part of being human that you can't, you're projecting your normalness on other people and simply cannot fathom what it could be like for someone who does not have a conscience. And that is a super, super dangerous way to exist because not everyone has a conscience, and our systems aren't set up, like our court systems are not set up, our workplaces are not designed with this in mind. They're assuming that people do have a conscience and that they are social creatures. So that's why you have to keep these things in mind. And again, your limbic system, your body is going to recognize it before your mind does.
We've got a question from my man, Kat.
Yeah.
And he's wondering if is it possible if you know people in this condition and people like this,
Mhm.
is it possible that they're philanthropic? Are they,
Oh,
are these people so extreme they're beyond the edge of things? Is it possible that someone who's a predator at this extreme level as you play out or that unstable, is it possible that they could be philanthropic and still behave this way?
oh, absolutely. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I didn't
Yes.
expect that answer actually.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
Yes. In fact, they love to get into positions like, um, doctor or lawyer or some the even like caring professions where they have control over lots of people. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And that's why, they're not all in jail for sure. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, so your main protection, there's nothing, your main protection is knowing that it's very hard to spot them. And they are among us, and you won't know who it is. That's the only protection you have, is knowing that you're vulnerable. So I just want to get through these. Do I have the time?
You have 15 minutes, less 1 minute.
Okay. So I'm just doing like a kind of comparison of these types. The types most likely to use your sympathy against you are the unstable type and the predator. The predator just pretends. The unstable, they actually are kind of pitiful, but they do play it up. Air castles in the sky, magical thinking. These three types, unstable, narcissist, and paranoid, they all have some kind of ideal in their heads that they want reality to conform to. The predator is just a realist, no ideal in their head at all. Okay, these types, unstable and paranoid, what they share is they are highly suspicious, they're very afraid, oversensitive, neurotic, wound collecting, always the victim, suck the joy from your life, and are constantly jealous. The unstable and paranoid are also the two types most likely to join cults. Unstable people are like, oh my God, a chance to be loved and accepted by this group who's going to take care of me. And paranoids will be so happy to be around other true believers and not have to deal with anyone who thinks differently from themselves. The people, these narcissists and predator, are most likely running the cult. And people who are autistic are probably going to be rejected by the cult because they will probably ask too many questions and say, excuse me, you say you're about this, but your actions are saying this, and I don't understand. They'll never make it to the inner circle. Not with that attitude. Narcissists and paranoid, they are insufferable know-it-alls. Paranoid and autistic are morally pretty rigid, want to be by themselves, obsessed with things that very few people are interested in, and not always the best in romance. Unfortunately, the cluster Bs are taken to be the most romantic, even though they have very little effective empathy. So sort of unfair there. As a longtime married person, I say the person closer to being on the spectrum is definitely going to be the more romantic person in the end. So unstable narcissist, there are pedestals going on. So like I said before, for the unstable person, you're on the pedestal and they're worshiping you. And for the narcissist, they're going to be on the pedestal. So again, healthy relationships, no pedestals at all. You are just equals. Like I said before, this is probably the most dangerous combination, narcissist and paranoid. Does anyone come to mind? Any examples? This could be Putin. I don't know.
I know. Well, I was going to say, I know certainly does not trip over the romantic wire, I don't think, but would Trump not fall? It's tough to know who the real Trump is, but I could see those being his two defining characteristics.
I don't think he's quite as paranoid. So most people put Trump as a narcissist, even though he seems like a sociopath. It's the most people put him as a malignant narcissist. I think he's less.
Fair enough.
I think he's not actually all that paranoid. He's not that afraid, I think.
Isn't that
not like
the same frame? Malevolent narcissist, serial killers, aren't they the same pattern?
What?
Serial killers?
No, serial killers are probably most likely they're just sociopaths. They're predators. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Almost always they're psychopaths. And by the way, psychopaths, they're not just like bloodthirsty people. Psychopaths are, they have all different interests. So some may be bloodthirsty killers. Others want money or power. Some just want to lay out by the pool. And don't want to work. So they have all sorts of different interests. The thing that unites them is just that they don't care about other people. But they like all sorts of different things. It's very difficult to tell malignant narcissists and predator types apart, because if someone doesn't have empathy, they're very hurtful. Either way. So from the victim standpoint, it's kind of splitting hairs, but the main difference is that real predators run cold. So if you look in their eyes, sometimes like after they drop the mask, they look cold. Their eyes are cold. And narcissists, they run hot. So you feel heat coming from them. That's a main way to tell the difference. So these are just some charts that give you some information. So you can see the predator is both low on empathy and low on conscience. You see, though, the likely victim, take note that the likely victim is actually high in empathy and high in conscience. And conscientiousness. So conscientiousness is like what gets you through med school. It's like the stick-to-itiveness, like, oh, I'm gonna like try hard, I'll never quit. The more, so you might think that a likely victim would be a weak person. And while many predators look for someone temporarily weak, like moving, they just finished their master's thesis, like someone in transition or someone exhausted. They actually don't look for people who are just weak. It's actually better for them if they have people, strong people who are dedicated to being in that relationship, because then they're less likely to leave. They're more likely to stick it out. So victims aren't who you might think they are. Okay, so this is an empathy chart. Along the left is the theory of mind. So that is being able to predict what other people are thinking is one part of empathy. In the bottom, that's affective empathy. So that is the ability to feel when other people are having feelings. You catch those feelings and feel with them. The predator, and like the cluster Bs, predator, narcissist, unstable, they're all pretty good at knowing what you're thinking, but they just don't care. The likely victim is very high in empathy and also theory of mind. And the person who's autistic it's very hard for them to know what others are thinking, but they feel things very strongly sometimes. So they have people who are autistic often have high affective empathy. And so we're measuring the charming. See how both the predator and narcissist are very, very charming. And one, the predator is cold, the narcissist is hot. And hang on. And the unstable is kind of off the charts in terms of heat, very emotional. And I think, okay, I'm going to stop the share. Oh, okay. So let's answer the questions. First of all, does anyone have any ideas on what you can do if you can't actually get out of the relationship? Does anyone have any suggestions on how to deal?
Since I'm a professional consultant and advisor, I would think I'd be out of my, if I was so upset and out of my depth, I would get a consultant and advisor to help me.
Yeah, okay.
I think finding allies though, right? Like if you feel like you're in a toxic culture or whatever, it's amazing. If I've learned anything from Hollywood movies, it's like when you stand up to the bully, all of a sudden with some level of group assent, it's amazing sometimes how they can back off. But
yeah, so I would say document, and instead so what some people do is just keep all their feelings inside and then one day just explode, or at work they might go to HR and be like, I think this person is a sociopath. HR doesn't care. You can't just go to them and be like, this person's really mean. They're not going to do anything unless you meticulously document what's going on and keep records in a place where a person can't find them, and then present that information in a really calm way, emphasizing how it will benefit them to do something about this person. So that's advice from Martha Stout.
Greg seemed to have some background and comments in the chat about coming in conflict with a narcissist. You want to say anything, Greg, about that? I know you chimed in earlier on.
Yeah, this is Greg. Can you hear me okay? I don't have the camera on. I'm out doing chores on the farm here. So so I had that whole experience with the narcissistic boss, the guy that dressed like the peacock. He was 6 months with the company. I was 30 years with the company, but yet somehow, when you bring somebody in like that, you want to give them a chance. And I had everything documented to the hilt. I had quotes, I had witnesses. I did everything right, and it still didn't work. And I even went so far as an EEOC complaint because it was discrimination, and it didn't work there either, even with all the documentation. So run fast, run hard, get away from it. And even if it means you're leaving a year's severance behind, because they're not going to pay you that either. Wow. So I don't mean to bring this whole thing down, but it's I've commented that narcissism is one of the most commonly run and most well-attended rooms on Clubhouse. So it must be rampant out there. And I experienced it several times in my career. And best thing to do is just suck it up and move on, and don't let it bring you down, because all that documentation, I still have it, and it hurts to look at it because it's all true. So hopefully this is helpful, but yeah.
Oh my God, what an incredible story. And
Yeah,
oh my God, that is so
it is.
heartbreaking.
It is an incredible story, so much so that I'm writing a book, and maybe someday somebody can learn something from it. But that's kind of why I'm hanging out with you guys, because I got no place better to go. Because my complaining, if you will, both in terms of internally to HR and using government agencies, has basically blacklisted me. So anyway, but it was a good time for me in my career. So most people, this getting allies thing, and I will land this plane here in a second, but getting allies is tough because everybody's earning a paycheck that's feeding the family, paying the bills, and so on. And all this psychological safety stuff is great. I believe in all of it, but most people aren't going to confront it because there's too much at stake. And that's what I found with my situation. My best friends quietly backed away in order to keep their paychecks. So anyway, it's a true story.
Totally
We hope you
believable.
can find some peace, Greg. That's and then coming through that kind of traumatic thing, a mission like writing a book. I'm thankful and grateful for people like you.
Yeah, it's last word here. Yeah, it's I don't know, it should be cathartic, but it's almost like kryptonite looking at the file, so to speak. And but anyway, it's gonna have a happy ending. So I learned something from it, and I'm hoping to share that with others. And it's not going to be the downer story either. It's going to be like, here's what we can do, here's how we get on top of it before it becomes a problem, kind of a story.
And Gregor, what was your main takeaway?
Main takeaway here tonight?
No, from your experience.
Oh, yeah. So I think I said it. I was like, forget about the money, forget about your legacy, get away from it, and keep your mental health. Don't let it drive you nuts. So yeah, don't get depressed, don't get anxious, don't do the drugs, just get away from it. The drugs to make you feel better. Yeah. Whole experience with that I can write about.
All right, Lauren, any last comments? We're at time here. Thank you so much.
No, I'm good.
All right, and hey, I recognize somebody copy pasted the compliment I was giving you earlier. I don't think it was for you. I think it was somebody else. Did that throw you for a loop? Have you been helping homeless people in Canada during the pandemic?
No.
I didn't think so, but not that you wouldn't, right?
You should start.
Yeah, we should all start. But anyhow, sorry about that. It didn't make sense to me as I was reading it. I'm like, wait a minute, she's in St. Paul. So anyhow, thank you again, Lauren. Very enlightening. I have some friends and family who need to see the replay of this for sure, and I'll be glad to look at it a second time. All right, I guess we're going to stop and start the recording. Thank you, Rob. And Scott's in the house.